I'll be honest with you. There have been a few episodes where it's been a little bit difficult to find enough hot topics from the recent days to fill out a full script. Sometimes, while there's a lot going on, there isn't a lot that really catches my interest. This is not one of those weeks. So, in a departure from the usual format of a few short rants and then a deep dive, instead, this week's episode is going to cover 5 topics in roughly equal depth. There's the HSS announcement that Tylenol use during pregnancy affects autism. We'll talk about the right's fascination with pronatalism. That's more babies, to put it plainly. We'll discuss the recent Tom Homan bribe story. We'll shed a little light on the real truth about political violence in the U.S., despite what the Vice President would have us believe. And finally, we'll finish up with a little chat about the anonymity that's been given to ICE agents by way of face masks. It's a lot to cover, so let's get rolling. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Neighbor on the Left, the podcast where we talk about liberal politics, human decency, and life on the blue side of America's ideological divide. My name is Don Spielis, your host. And today we're going to start off with one of the wildest claims to hit the headlines this month. That Tylenol, good old acetaminophen, is secretly causing autism in kids if moms take it during pregnancy. And who's leading the charge? Well, of course, none other than Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the HHS Secretary under President Trump, who's turning this into a full-blown policy push. If you're a parent, a soon-to-be parent, or just someone who's tired of anti-science alarmism, buckle up. This is mostly nonsense, cherry-picked correlations dressed up as causation, ignoring decades of solid research. We'll break down the dubious connection Kennedy's making, why it falls apart under scrutiny, and, crucially, the real dangers of scaring people away from a safe fever reducer when moms and babies need it most. So let's get into it. First, a quick history lesson, because timelines matter when someone's trying to rewrite them. Kennedy and his crew love to imply that the rise in autism diagnoses exploded right alongside Tylenol's popularity, like some sinister plot. But let's check the receipts. The term autism was first used in a psychiatric context way back in 1911 by Eugene Bleuler, describing symptoms in schizophrenic patients. But the real milestone, in 1943, Leo Kanner published his groundbreaking paper describing autism as a distinct disorder in children. Autistic disturbances of affect contact. That's a full 12 years before Tylenol even hit the market. The drug itself, acetaminophen, was synthesized in 1878, but it wasn't widely used for pain and fever until the 1950s. Tylenol as a brand, introduced in 1955 as a prescription med, going over the counter around 1960. So here's the kicker. Autism was being diagnosed in kids before Tylenol existed. How could a drug that wasn't on the shelves cause cases from the 1940s? Well, of course, the answer is it couldn't. This isn't just trivia, it's a massive hole in the narrative. The rise in autism diagnoses since the 80s? Yeah, it's real, from about 1 in 2,000 kids in the 80s to 1 in 36 today. But experts agree that's mostly due to broader diagnostic criteria, better screening, and increased awareness, not some hidden toxin. Blaming Tylenol ignores all that, and it's a classic correlation falls for causation trap. Think about it. In the same era autism diagnoses climbed, so did smartphone use, organic food sales, and yoga pants. Doesn't make them culprits. But Kennedy's spinning this yarn to fit his long-standing anti-pharma crusade. Speaking of which, let's talk about what exactly RFK and the Trump administration dropped on us this September 2025. Just last week at a White House briefing, President Trump and Secretary Kennedy announced that HHS is pushing the FDA to slap new warnings on acetaminophen labels, citing a supposed link to autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders from prenatal use. They're talking physician notices, updated safety info, and even tying it to broader autism initiatives like promoting leucoravin, a folate derivative, as some miracle fix. Kennedy's pitch: that moms taking Tylenol for headaches or fevers during pregnancy are putting their babies at risk for autism. He leaned hard on a handful of observational studies showing weak associations, painting it as a smoking gun. President Trump chimed in, calling it a game changer and vowing to end the autism epidemic. Bold words, but here's the rub. Even their own announcement admits the science is conflicting. No causal proof, just correlations from epidemiology. The kind of data that screams more research needed, not panic and relabel everything. Now, of course, this is not Kennedy's first rodeo. Remember his vaccine autism obsession? Same playbook. Amplify fringe fears, ignore consensus, and erode trust in medicine. But let's be clear, this claim is dubious at best, dangerous at worst. It's built on shaky ground, and when we zoom out to the full evidence, it crumbles. So what does the science actually say? Spoiler, not what Kennedy's selling. There are some studies suggesting a possible association, about 27 out of 46 in a recent 2025 systematic review using the navigation guide method. Those are mostly observational, relying on moms' self-reports of Tylenol use, and they show small upticks in autism or ADHD risk, like a 20-30% relative increase. But relative risk sounds scarier than it is. Absolute risks stay tiny, often around 1%. Now flip to the refuting side, and it's a wall of high-quality nope. The gold standard here, a massive 2024 Swedish cohort study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, analyzing nearly 2.5 million kids born from 1995 to 2019, followed through 2021. That's right, 2.48 million children with detailed medical records on prenatal acetaminophen exposure for over 185,000 of them. In basic models, they saw those marginal associations Kennedy loves. Hazard ratios around 1.05 to 1.07 for autism, ADHD, and intellectual disability. But then they did the smart thing. Sibling comparisons. By looking at brothers and sisters from the same family, controlling for genetics, shared environment, and mom-specific factors like illness or stress, the links vanished. Hazard ratios dropped to 0.98 for autism, 0.98 for ADHD, and 1.01 for intellectual disability. No dose-response pattern, no timing effects. Conclusion? No causal link. The associations were just confounding from why moms took the drug in the first place. Fevers, infections, and pain that might independently raise risks. And this isn't a one-off. Autism Speaks reviewed the literature in 2024 and flat out said no causal link, noting families with neurodevelopmental histories are more likely to use acetaminophen anyway. The Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine's September 2025 statement, acetaminophen remains appropriate for pregnant patients. PBS summed it up. Research doesn't show causation, period. Reuters, NBC, NPR, all reporting experts saying the bulk of evidence finds no firm tie. Gaps abound. Observational data can't prove cause and effect. Confounders like maternal fever or genetics muddy everything. Dosage, trimester specifics, barely studied. And those positive studies, often small, underpowered, or retracted under scrutiny. Kennedy's cherry-picking the suggestive bits while ignoring the rigorous refutations. It's not science, it's selective storytelling. But okay, let's steelman this for 1 second. Suppose there's a whisper of truth. Should we precautionary principle our way to ditching Tylenol? Absolutely not. Because the alternative is way riskier. Untreated fever and pain in pregnancy aren't benign. They're straight up threats to moms and babies. Picture this. You're pregnant, running a 101-degree fever from the flu. Do nothing? Studies show that ignoring your symptoms and muscling your way through spikes maternal risks like miscarriage by up to 2 to 3 times, especially in the first trimester. For the baby, high fever early on jacks up neural tube defects, spina bifida, anencephaly by 2 to 7 times. This is per Baby Center and the March of Dimes data. Heart defects, jaw malformations, even premature birth, all linked in animal and human studies. Worse, emerging research ties untreated maternal fever to higher autism and neurodevelopmental disorder risks in kids. The very thing Kennedy's warning about. A 2021 meta-analysis found fever during pregnancy associates with increased NDD odds, independent of meds. And pain? Chronic untreated stuff stresses the body, raising preterm labor odds by 20 to 50%. The Society for Maternal and Fetal Medicine warns that skipping acetaminophen could lead to more harm than any hypothetical risk. Stats paint a grim picture. In the U.S., about 10 to 15% of pregnancies involve fevers needing treatment. Without reliable reducers like Tylenol, the safest option per ACOG guidelines, we're talking thousands more birth defects yearly. Kennedy's fearmongering, it could keep moms suffering, babies at risk, all for a debunked boogeyman. Now let's zero in on Kennedy's dubious connection. He's framing this as environmental toxin warfare, but it's a house of cards. The studies he cites, mostly self-reported exposures years later, recall bias abound. Why take Tylenol? Often for infections or fevers, which themselves are fever-linked to autism in some data. Confound that away in the sibling studies, poof, gone. No biological smoking gun either. Sure, acetaminophen crosses the placenta, and lab rats show oxidative stress in megadoses. But human relevance? Zilch. No clear mechanism tying it to the 100 plus genes involved in autism. And globally, same weak signals in diverse populations, but they evaporate when controls are applied. So, to wrap up, RFK's Tylenol autism push is more or less nonsense, overhyped, historically illiterate, and refuted by heavyweight studies like that Swedish behemoth I mentioned. No consensus, no causation, just confusion. Use Tylenol judiciously if needed, but most of all, talk to your doctor. Don't take advice from a lawyer in a cabinet position. Untreated fevers are dangerous in pregnant mothers. Pure and simple. Myths just spread misinformation. Do you ever catch yourself scrolling through TikTok or Instagram late at night, watching those heartwarming videos of families piling into minivans for a road trip, and think, man, when did having kids start feeling like signing up for a mortgage and a side of existential dread? Yeah, me too. And as we sit in the thick of Trump's second term here in September of 2025, the Republicans are out here preaching like it's the Sermon on the Mount. Have more babies. Save America. It's this whole pronatalist fever dream, led by folks like J.D. Vance and Elon Musk, who want us cranking out kids like it's a patriotic duty. But as your neighbor on the left, leaning over the fence with a cup of coffee that's gone cold, let me tell you, this isn't about love or legacy. It's a slick mix of panic, power plays, and plain old hypocrisy. And the people who pay the price? Mostly women, poor families, and kids who deserve better than empty rhetoric. So let's break it down, neighbor to neighbor. First off, what's got the GOP so hot and bothered about birth rates? The U.S. fertility rates dipped below 1.6 kids per woman, way under the 2.1 replacement level, and conservatives are treating it like the apocalypse. J.D. Vance, our VP, who we're going to talk more about later, he's got 4 kids of his own, and he laid it out blunt at the March for Life back in January. I want more babies in the United States of America. Trump jumped in, calling himself the fertilization president. I kid you not. He promised baby bonuses and tax tweaks to juice things up. Even the Department of Transportation's in on it. Secretary Sean Duffy, a big anti-abortion guy, issued a memo last January prioritizing federal grants for communities with higher marriage and birth rates. Sounds wholesome, right? Like they're finally getting it. Families need support. But peel back the Hallmark card for a moment, and the motives are a bit messier. On the surface, it's Economics 101, GOP style. They're sweating an aging population. Fewer workers means a shrinking tax base to prop up Social Security and Medicare for all of us, including all those boomers shuffling off to Florida. A bigger workforce, more consumers, more innovation. They've got economists nodding along saying population growth juices GDP and tech breakthroughs. Okay, fair enough. We've all seen the headlines about Japan or Italy turning into ghost towns of retirees. And culturally, they frame low birth rates as moral decay. Marriage is down. Families are splintered. Society's ditching the nuclear unit for Netflix and chill. Vance calls having kids a core social obligation, tying it to this nostalgia for Ozzie and Harriet days. Post-Roe, with abortion bans in place, they've even seen a blip in births, especially among low-income folks in red states where fertility ticked up 2 to 3% after Dobbs. So, mission accomplished. Well, not if you ask the moms living it. Here's where it starts to get ugly. The ulterior motives lurking under the family values banner. This isn't just about cribs and college funds. It's laced with control, inequality, and some straight-up racial politics that would make your skin crawl. Take Project 2025, that Heritage Foundation playbook Trump's crew is dusting off. It's pushing pronatalism hard, but not for everyone's babies. It's a far-right family agenda that weaponizes motherhood to roll back women's rights. Critics like the National Women's Law Center call it out. Baby bonuses and motherhood medals sound cute, but they're bait to surveil fertility, track pregnancies, and punish choices that don't fit the script. And the racial angle? Oh, it's there. Articles in places like the Chinese Public Review lay it bare. American pronatalism has eugenics echoes, with whispers about selective gestation boosting white middle-class births while ignoring or restricting others. Elon Musk and Vance aren't subtle. Musk's ranting about population collapse like it's code for too few of their kind of people. And Vance is tied to this broligarchy, tech bros and Pauls who want a docile workforce of breeders to fuel empires. Dig a little deeper and it's all about power. The Guardian's been all over how this unites family values dead-enders with right-wing techies. An incoherent coalition, sure, but effective at stoking fears of demographic doom. Why? Because more babies mean more voters down the line who might buy the traditionalist line, and a bigger pool of low-wage workers to keep wages down and profits up. Population connection nails it. This push deepens inequalities that benefit the elite, the broligarchy, while poor families foot the bill. It's not pro-life as such, it's pro-cheap labor. And for women, it's a trapdoor back to the kitchen with abortion bans as the lock. Research shows those bans spiked births among the poorest Black and Latino women in the South, where maternal mortality is already sky high, but without a safety net, it's a recipe for tragedy. Now let's talk about policies, or what passes for them. Republicans aren't going full Nordic with paid leave and universal child care. Nah, that's socialism. Their family-focused vibe? It's code for propping up stay-at-home moms, heterosexual ones, mind you, with stuff like expanding the child tax credit. Yay, finally. And tweaking taxes to reward marriage. Trump's tossed out a $1,000 baby bonus for kids born through 2028, and there's chatter about easing daycare regs to drop costs. Even IVF's getting a nod. A big shift after Alabama's embryo ruling scared folks, with Vance pushing federal coverage. Sounds progressive. Well, hold your applause. Because here's the hypocrisy that boils my blood. These same folks are terrified of more kids until it's time to vote. Moms across red states are spilling their guts. Like a woman named Claire in Ohio who's nixed baby number 2 because reproductive rights are crumbling, education's a battleground, and healthcare's a total crapshoot. Another woman in North Carolina nearly died from pregnancy complications and can't face another round without safe abortion access. In Texas and Idaho, women are tying tubes or jetting out of state for IVF, shelling out $10,000 to $20,000 because bans create chaos, even for non-abortions like ectopic pregnancies. Fertility's tanking harder in banned states. Idaho down 14 points since 2013, proving fear works both ways. And while they're cheering more babies, Trump's 2026 budget cut axes childcare subsidies for college parents, and the GOP's reconciliation bill guts Medicaid, the lifeline for 40 million low-income kids. Which brings me to the real gut punch. The GOP's long, ugly history of yanking the rug out from under poor kids and families. This is not new. It's their playbook since the Reagan era. Back in the 80s, his, quote, welfare queen myth slashed aid to families with dependent children, turning cash aid into block grants that starved states. Fast forward. 2017, they rammed through massive cuts to SNAP, welfare, and housing for low-income families. Billions siphoned into tax breaks for the rich. Remember 2018? House Republicans tried to fund those tax cuts by gutting food stamps for 42 million people, mostly kids and seniors. Fast forward to now. Trump's big beautiful bill in May, it carves out billions from food and health benefits, per The Guardian, provisions that advocacy groups say will kill. Kevin McCarthy, back in 2023, cut a deal with hardliners that waitlisted over 1 million women and kids from WIC, nutritional aid for poor moms and infants. The Washington Post called it last May. The pronatalist party escalates its war on children, slashing Medicaid and food stamps while preaching family growth. Nearly half of U.S. kids are poor or low income, 43% of women as well. And Republicans block full child tax credits for the neediest while prioritizing quote-unquote underserved rural whites over urban poor. It's a cruel contradiction. Have more babies, they shout. Then figure it out without our help. School closures in Idaho, tied to enrollment drops from fear and cuts. Daycare costs equaling a second mortgage. Tough luck, no subsidies if you're not married and straight. This isn't support. It's a setup for failure, hitting Black, Latina, and poor white families the hardest, where maternal death rates are already an epidemic. Okay, look, pronatalism's not all bad. Democrats have been pushing real investments like paid leave and affordable care forever. But the GOP's version, it's ineffective window dressing. History shows government cash dumps don't budge birth rates without fixing inequity and rights. South Korea's thrown billions and still flops because patriarchy's the real killer. Critics nail the inconsistencies. Fiscal hawks cry big government at child allowances while liberals smell coercion. And for disadvantaged pops, abortion bans jack up births but tank health outcomes. The Journal of American Medical Association got the data on worse child poverty in banned states. So what's the play? Don't buy the hype. If they want more kids, fund the schools, clinics, and pantries, not just for the correct families. Vote like your family's future depends on it, because it does. Support local mutual aid. Push for universal programs that lift everybody. And if you're on the fence about kids, that's your call. Certainly not J.D. Vance's, and certainly not Elon Musk's. Okay, so picture this. It's September 2024, the election's heating up, and somewhere in a bustling kava restaurant, you know, the Mediterranean spot with the endless bowls, a bag gets passed under the table. Inside it, 50 grand in crisp bills. The guy grabbing it, Tom Homan, the hardline immigration hawk who will soon become Trump's border czar. And the handoff? Well, that was from an undercover FBI agent. On tape. Yes, you heard that right. This isn't some gritty Martin Scorsese flick. It's the opening act of what reeks like a cover-up, courtesy of Trump's hand-picked DOJ. So let's talk about how This bribery bust got buried faster than a bad tweet, and why it screams, protect the king at all costs. We're talking corruption, cronyism, and what has increasingly become the slow death of accountability in Trump 2.0. So let's rewind and lay out the facts, because in a sea of spin, the truth is our lifeline. According to two sources deep in the know, folks who can't go on record but wouldn't risk their necks for nothing, this all kicked off last summer under the Biden DOJ. They weren't even gunning for Homan at first. No, this spun out of a separate national security probe into some shady operator who kept name-dropping Tom like he was the kingpin of immigration grift. Quote, Homan's taking bribes, the target allegedly spilled, in exchange for hooking companies up with fat government contracts once he's back in the saddle. Red flags everywhere. So the feds pivot, setting up a sting, and boom, Homan walks right into it. Meets the undercover at the restaurant, chats up future deals for his consulting buddies, and accepts that $50,000 bag like it's a loyalty perk. Oh, and on the recording, he reportedly says he'll stash it in a trust until his White House gig is done, because nothing says a lifelong public servant like laundering a bribe for later. Now, Tom Homan's no wide-eyed rookie. This guy's a career ICE vet, served under Obama, even ran the show as acting director during Trump's first term. But when Trump lost in 2020, Homan didn't fade to black. He launched a consulting firm peddling immigration expertise to companies hungry for federal contracts. Think visas, detention centers, border tech, the whole deportation industrial complex. It's cozy, right? Blurring lines between public duty and private payday. And with Trump roaring back in 24, promising the biggest mass expulsion in history, 10 to 20 million people, families ripped apart, communities gutted, Homan suddenly the architect. Border czar, they call him. The guy greenlighting billions in deals. So when whispers of pay-to-play hit the FBI's radar, it wasn't just a side quest. It was a potential bombshell exposing how Trump's inner circle might be feathering nests before the raids even start. Now, fast forward to early 2025. Trump's sworn in. Kash Patel, Trump's conspiracy peddling podcast bro turned FBI director, struts into the Hoover building like he owns it. And one of his first moves? Slam the door on the Homan probe over the summer. No charges, no trial, just a polite, closed for business. Patel and his deputy AG sidekick, Todd Blanche, yeah, the same guy who defended Trump in his hush money trial, drop a statement that's pure gaslight. Quote, no credible evidence of wrongdoing. This was a baseless witch hunt from the Biden era. We're focusing on real threats now. End quote. Real threats. Like what? Patel's grudge list? The guy spent years ranting about the deep state on Steve Bannon's couch, vowing revenge on anyone who dared investigate Trump world. And here he is, bearing a tape of his boss's deportation enforcer pocketing cash. Coincidence? Please. But wait, it gets thicker. Enter Emil Bove, Trump's acting deputy AG at the time. Now a fresh federal judge because why not reward the loyal? Back in February, he's briefed on the case, and instead of lock him up, he sneers it's a deep state op. That tinfoil trope about shadowy bureaucrats puppeteering from the basement. Bove's no stranger to this game. Days later, he orders corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams dropped, sparking resignations from pissed-off prosecutors who saw the fix was in. And get this. The DOJ's Public Integrity Unit, the squad that nailed Bob Menendez and chased Trump cronies, has been gutted under this crew. Dismantled, defunded, scattered like yesterday's headlines. Why chase bribes when you can chase voter fraud phantoms or drag Hunter Biden through the mud again? This isn't sloppy, it's systematic. A full-on cover-up to shield a Trump appointee from the cuffs he's earned. Think about the playbook. Probe starts under Biden, check. Weaponized DOJ. Sting catches the goods. Oh, but it's entrapment. Recording exists. Fake news, deep state edit. Grand jury's warming up in Texas Western District. Shut it down before indictments drop. And the White House, well, they're all in. Deputy Press Secretary Abigail Jackson pipes up, Homan's a phenomenal public servant doing God's work for Trump and America. Phenomenal at what? Exactly. Orchestrating family separations or just not getting caught on the first take. As for Homan himself, well, he finally surfaces on Fox with Laura Ingraham last night. Prime time for the faithful. And what's his big denial? Crickets. They say you took a bag of $50,000 cash from feds to steer contracts, Ingraham prods. Homan rambles, I did nothing illegal. They're trying to dirty me up. Tom Homan's not going anywhere. Not a peep about the bag. No, I never touched it, just deflection and a sob story about missing his wife for months on the road. Buddy, save the violins. We've got audio of you pocketing what could buy a small deportation charter flight. And on X, the timeline's exploding. Ron Filipkowski nails it. Nowhere in this long rambling answer does he deny taking the bag. Folks are calling it the non-denial denial of the year, with memes of Homan as Tony Soprano at the falafel line. Now, so far, Democrats aren't exactly sleeping on this. Senate Judiciary Chair Dick Durbin fired off a letter today demanding the full file, recordings, transcripts, the works. House Oversight's Jamie Raskin, he's vowing hearings, blasting it as the Trump DOJ's first official act of self-preservation. Even some GOP moderates are side-eyeing it, whispers from the squishy center about the optics. But the MAGA echo chamber? Fox is running interference. Biden's FBI tried to entrap a patriot. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt echoes, Homan did nothing wrong. This is political persecution. Persecution? For what? Getting taped with a bribe bag. Vox calls BS. The administration has ended a federal bribery investigation into one of its top immigration officials. And the BBC, dry as ever, says, White House denies, but sources say otherwise. Now zoom out, and this isn't a one-off glitch. It's the feature, not the bug, of Trump 2.0. Remember the first term? Homan's family separation policy tore kids from parents at the border. Caged toddlers sparked lawsuits and UN condemnations. Now he's back, promising the largest deportation operation in history, with private firms, his old consulting pals, lining up for the gravy train. That $50K? Chump change. If it greased wheels for billion-dollar detention deals. And with Patel at the FBI helm, a guy who once plotted to, quote, fire all the mid-level managers, end quote, for disloyalty, and Blanche as Trump's legal firewall, the DOJ is less a watchdog and more a lapdog. We've seen this movie. Probes into Trump allies fizzle while retribution tours target foes. Adams' case dropped? Check. Menendez? Still grinding, but watch. It's a rule of man, not law. And Homan's the poster boy. What's the real damage here? Beyond one grifter skating, it's the rot spreading. Americans, immigrant or not, deserve a border policy driven by humanity and law, not kickbacks and cruelty. Homan's not just any appointee. He's the face of Trump's xenophobic fever dream. The guy who'll oversee raids in schools, churches, workplaces. If he's corrupt, and that tape says he is, How many contracts go to the highest bidder instead of the best bid? Taxpayer dollars funneled to cronies while families flee shadows. And trust? Forget it. When the FBI's own director buries evidence to protect the powerful, what's left? A DOJ that's DOA, dead on arrival. Public integrity's toast. Career prosecutors jumping ship. It's a brain drain for justice. So where do we go from here? Congress needs to haul Patel, Blanche, and Bove, subpoena the tapes, force the truth. Whistleblowers, protect them like gold. And us, keep the heat on. Calls, shares, votes. This cover-up isn't just about Homan's sticky fingers. It's a test of whether America's still a republic or just Trump's reality show. So there I was once again scrolling through feeds the other day, and there it was, Vice President J.D. Vance sitting in for the late Charlie Kirk on The Charlie Kirk Show. Yeah, that bombshell episode from September 15th, just days after Kirk's tragic assassination at that Utah college rally. Vance, with that earnest hillbilly elegy drawl, drops this whopper. Quote, "This is not a both sides problem. If both sides have a problem, then one side has a much bigger and malignant problem, and that's the truth." End quote. He's talking about political violence and pinning the bulk of it, including Kirk's killing, on what he calls an incredibly destructive movement of left-wing extremism. He even vows the administration's gonna go after the NGO network that foments, facilitates, and engages in violence, like it's some shadowy Antifa cabal pulling strings. Bald-faced lie? Absolutely. It's the kind of gaslighting that makes you want to check to see if your coffee's spiked. Vance isn't just wrong, he's peddling a dangerous inversion of reality to shield his own side's extremism while demonizing the left. So let's dismantle this nonsense piece by piece, armed with cold, hard data from the experts, not Fox fever dreams. So first, to set the stage, because context matters when someone's rewriting history on a podcast mic. Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, that conservative youth machine, gunned down on September 10th at a campus event in Provo. The shooter's motive? Still under wraps as of this recording on the 22nd, but Vance jumps straight to blame. Left-wing extremism is part of the reason why Charlie was killed by an assassin's bullet. He paints it as a growing and powerful minority on the far left, celebrating Kirk's death online and deserving doxing. Call their employer, he urges listeners. Trump's echoing it from the Rose Garden, all the while, vowing a crackdown on progressive terror. It's classic deflection. One tragedy hits the right, and suddenly the left's the boogeyman for all political violence. But Vance's claim that the left's extremism dwarfs the right's, that's not spin. That's a flat-out fabrication, contradicted by decades of rigorous research from non-partisan heavyweights. And if we let it slide, we're not just buying a lie, we're diverting cops, cash, and counterterrorism from the real threats staring us in the face. So let's dive into the facts. This isn't my opinion or some liberal think tank screed. It's straight from the fact sheet compiled by experts tracking extremism for years. Start with the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, the go-to for national security pros. Their database crunches 893 domestic terrorist incidents ranging from 1994 to 2020. What do they find? Right-wing extremists behind 57%. Left-wing, a distant 25%. And since 2011, Right wings dominated the field, hands down. We're talking plots, attacks, the works. From militia standoffs to synagogue shootings. Vance wants you to picture Antifa smashing windows as the apocalypse. CSIS says, nah, the real actions from white supremacists and anti-government radicals on the right. But numbers are one thing. Body counts hit harder. Enter PBS and the University of Maryland's START program, the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism. Their deep dive? Right-wing extremists chalk up 75 to 80% of U.S. terrorism-related deaths since 9/11. That's not hyperbole. It's fatalities from bombings, massacres, vehicle rammings, think El Paso 2019, 23 dead at the Walmart, manifesto screaming invasion at the border, or Buffalo 2022, 10 black shoppers gunned down by a teen radicalized online. Left-wing violence? Sure. There have been clashes at protests, some property damage during BLM marches, but deaths? Rare as a hen's teeth. START's data shows right-wing actors are way more likely to go lethal. Left-wing incidents fizzle out quicker, are less frequent, and less deadly when they do pop off. Vance's podcast pivot? It's like ignoring a forest fire to yell about someone's backyard barbecue. He claims the left's malignant problem is the driver, but flip to the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, PNAS, that gold standard 2022 study. They stack left, right, and even Islamist extremism side by side. Their verdict? Left-wing extremists have, quote, far lower odds of causing fatalities. Period. Right-wing violence isn't just more common, it's engineered for maximum carnage. Mass shootings, pipe bombs at clinics, January 6th pipe bombs still unsolved but smelling of far-right fury. The fact sheet nails the talking point. The most deadly attacks in recent decades, overwhelmingly tied to right-wing or white supremacist ideologies. Tree of Life Synagogue, 11 murdered. Emmanuel AME Church, 9 black parishioners. Pittsburgh, Charleston, the list reads like a right-wing hit parade. Now, it's not as though we're not used to an extreme level of BS from the current administration, so why does Vance's lie sting so bad? Because it's not harmless bluster. This guy's the vice president, second in line, shaping policy from the Oval Shadow. His podcast rant isn't just hot air. It's a prelude to a crackdown. He's got Stephen Miller on the line whispering about targeting NGOs, code for immigrant aid groups and progressive organizations, maybe even universities, hosting Kirk's events. Trump's already floating executive orders to, quote, destroy progressive groups, per Democracy docket reports. And the FBI? Well, under Kash Patel's thumb, they're pivoting resources from tracking Proud Boys and Oath Keepers to left-wing terror cells that barely exist. Zateo's news debunking piece lays it bare. Right-wing extremists own the majority of extremist killings every year this decade, except 2016. Mischaracterize that, and you starve real prevention. More mass graves, not fewer. Think about the pattern here. Vance built his brand on forgotten Americans, but when it comes to forgotten facts, he's all in. Remember his 2021 book? He rails against elites, yet here he is, the elite VP, flipping the script on extremism to protect the MAGA flank. Kirk's killing, horrific no doubt, gets weaponized to erase the right's bloody ledger. Left-wing incidents? Yeah, they've spiked in rhetoric post-Dobbs, eco-saboteurs gluing to Starbucks doors, but lethality? CSIS clocks them at under 10% of plots since 2020. property over people, protests over plots. The right wing, 70% plus of foiled attacks per the Anti-Defamation League tallies. It's not both sides with a lefty asterisk. It's a right-wing epidemic Vance wants to wish away. And the hypocrisy? Vance and crew downplay January 6th as a tourist stroll. But one campus shooter, motivation yet to be determined, and it's left-wing Armageddon. Forbes caught him doubling down, blaming, quote, proud members of the far left, end quote, for most violence, while the admin ignores militia training camps in Michigan woods. Al Jazeera's got the White House promising a broad crackdown on liberal groups, tying it to Kirk's death without evidence. It's fear-mongering 101. Stoke the base, justify the overreach, sideline the scrutiny. But data doesn't lie. Starts longitudinal work. Right-wing violence correlates with election cycles, online radicalization, Parler, 8chan, now Truth Social, echo chambers. The left, more decentralized, less armed to the teeth. So let me hammer home the talking points, because repetition fights revisionism. First, right-wing extremist violence is the primary source of domestic terrorism in the U.S. CSIS, START, PNAS, they all sing the same tune. Frequency, right leads 2 to 1. Lethality, 3 to 1 or worse. Second, left-wing incidents are less frequent and typically less deadly, often targeting property rather than people. Think eco-activists blocking pipelines versus incels plotting school shootings. Third, the most deadly attacks, mass shootings, bombings, in recent decades are overwhelmingly linked to right-wing or right supremacist ideologies. Vegas, 2017, 58 dead, right-wing ties probed. Poway Synagogue, unmistakable. Fourth, claims that left-wing extremism is the greater threat are contradicted by decades of data. Vance's malignant jab, laughable against this mountain of evidence. So why push this now? The timing suspect. Trump's second term's humming along with deportation fever, Project 2025 blueprints gutting civil rights. Kirk's death, a conservative icon silenced, hands them a martyr. Vance hosts the show, turns tribute into takedown. Quote, violence is not okay, but the left's the real villain, end quote. It's deflection from their own house. FBI warnings on rising white nationalist threats ignored. Resources diverted. DHS shifts focus to anarchist phantoms, per Washington Post. Public safety suffers. Another Pulse nightclub, another Oak Creek Gurdwara, because polls like Vance prioritize narrative over numbers. Overall, empirical evidence screams it. Right-wing extremism poses the greatest threat to public safety, both in frequency and lethality. Mischaracterizing the problem, like Vance's podcast lie, risks diverting resources away from where they're most needed. We're talking about lives, not likes on a feed. So next time some suit spins lefty terror, hit him with the facts. Demand accountability, fund the researchers, protect the vulnerable. Kirk deserves justice, not lies in his name. And finally, let's talk about ICE. Imagine this. It's a quiet morning in Los Angeles. Kids heading to school, families grabbing coffee. Suddenly, a van screeches up. Doors fly open and out pour shadowy figures in tactical gear, faces hidden behind baklavas and ski masks, badges glinting, but names invisible. They grab a father at the bus stop, cuff him without a word, and vanish. Is this ICE on a legit raid? Or some vigilante gang playing dress-up, terrorizing immigrants for kicks? You can't tell. That's the nightmare California's just slammed the door on with SB 627, the No Secret Police Act, signed into law by Governor Newsom last week. Effective January 1st, 2026, it bans law enforcement, local cops, state troopers, and yes, federal ICE agents from wearing face coverings that hide their identity during operations. No more baklavas, no more neck gaiters, or those creepy anonymous masks that turn enforcers into ghosts. And I'll tell you, as somebody who's questioned the logic of this from the beginning, this is long overdue. Masked ICE agents isn't just inappropriate. It's a recipe for abuse, a shield for power trips, and an open invitation for pretenders to wreak havoc. We're talking a fundamental betrayal of what policing, any policing, should stand for: accountability, humanity, and trust. So let's unpack why this law is a win, why the pushback's pathetic, and why hiding faces in uniform is as American as apple pie gone rotten. Let's start with the basics, because knowledge is the antidote to fearmongering. SB 627 doesn't mess around. It makes it straight up illegal for officers to don facial coverings that conceal who they are while on duty. Think ski masks, baklavas, anything that turns a face into a blank slate. This hits ICE hard. Those federal immigration warriors who've made masked raids their signature look under Trump 2.0. But there are smart carve-outs. Undercover ops where blending in saves lives, fine. Gas masks for tear gas chaos or N95 masks during pandemics, of course that's covered. And tactical SWAT teams in high-risk takedowns, they get a nod if necessity demands it. Penalties? Willful violations could land as infractions or misdemeanors, ramping up if tied to abuses like false arrests or assaults. Agencies have to rewrite policies by next year to comply, forcing a real reckoning on how we show up in communities. Newsom didn't mince words when he signed it. This is resistance to Trump's deportation machine, a shield for California's 10 million immigrants who deserve to know who's knocking. Senator Lola Smallwood Cuevas, who carried the bill, called it a blow against secret police tactics that sow terror. So why is this bill such a great thing? Why are the current operations so inappropriate? Peel back the tactical vest and it's simple. Anonymity is a license to abuse power. When an ICE agent's face is shrouded, that badge becomes a blank check for brutality. No name tag visible, no consequences staring back. We've seen it play out. Agents roughing up bystanders, slamming doors on families, all without a whisper of who to call out. Remember those viral videos from Trump's first term? Masked squads in Portland, unmarked vans snatching protesters? Wait, that was feds too. The pattern's clear. Hiding identities lets the id run wild. A 2023 ACLU report documented over 200 complaints of excessive force by masked federal agents in immigrant raids. Many dismissed because, well, who did it? It was a ghost story. Accountability evaporates. That agent who shoves a mom to the ground while her kids scream, he walks away faceless and untouchable. It's not protection, it's impunity. And in a system already stacked against brown and black folks, this mask mandate, ironic, right, amplifies every bias, every unchecked rage. Power without a face isn't authority, it's authoritarianism. But here's the kicker that keeps me up at night. These masks make it ridiculously easy for pretenders to accost anyone they please. Who's to say that a baklava-clad goon banging on your door at dawn is real ICE? Could be a cartel enforcer, a racist roadie from some militia Facebook group, or just a bored bigot with a costume from Amazon. California's immigrant communities have been screaming about this for years. Impersonation spikes when the real deal looks like the fakes. Back in 2019, after Trump's surge, LA saw a 40% jump in reported fake raids by self-styled Border Patrol thugs, per LAPD logs. One case, a farm worker in Fresno, beaten by men in tactical gear, yelling deportation, turned out to be locals settling a grudge, emboldened because they mimicked the masks. With faces hidden, victims can't ID perps, witnesses can't corroborate, and courts chase shadows. SB 627 flips that script. Show your face, show your badge, or get gone. It distinguishes the badge from the bandit, saving lives in the gray zone where fear meets fraud. Supporters, and I'm right there with them, nailed the purpose. Transparent law enforcement builds trust, not tombs. Masked agents don't enforce, they intimidate. Picture a kid spotting those black-clad specters at the park. Is that a hero or a horror movie? Immigrant families live in hypervigilance, skipping school runs, dodging doctors, all because the ghosts might appear. Unmasking humanizes the uniform, reminds everyone there's a person, fallible, accountable, behind the gun. Groups like the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights and the ACLU champion this bill because it discourages trauma, fosters reporting of real crimes, and yes, weeds out the wannabes. In sanctuary cities like San Francisco, where ISOPs already clash with local vibes, this could be a game changer. Agents identifiable means communities less likely to scatter like roaches. Trust isn't a luxury. It's the glue holding diverse states together. And California? 27% Latino, folks. This law is a lifeline. Of course, the blowback's predictable, and it's as weak and watered down as coffee. DHS and ICE are already howling, agent safety, doxing, threats. Borders are Tom Homan, yeah, the guy from the bribery scandal we chatted about earlier, fired off a memo yesterday. Federal supremacy trumps state meddling. Our agents won't comply. They trot out stats. Assaults on feds up 30% since January. Doxing lists circulating on Telegram. Fair? Well, sure. No one wants a target on their back. But here's the rub. Masks don't shield. They inflame. When you look like a Klan redo, you're begging for backlash. Name tags and body cams, tools most locals use daily, are the real armor enforcing de-escalation because Officer Ramirez thinks twice about that chokehold when it's on blast. ICE's safety whine ignores their own playbook. During Obama's term, unmasked ops had half the resistance incidents per a 2015 GAO audit. And preemption? That's federal arrogance talking. The Supremacy Clause doesn't greenlight secret squads. Courts have slapped down similar overreaches, like Arizona's SB 1070. Expect lawsuits. California's prepared, with AG Bonta vowing to defend. Operational necessity? Please. Most ICE raids are workplace sweeps or traffic stops, not ninja missions. Exemptions cover the rarities. The rest? Excuses for cowardice. Enforceability is the fun part. How do you ticket a Fed in tactical pants? Well, SB 627's got teeth. States can sue for violations, withhold co-op on joint ops, even pursue civil rights claims if masks enable abuses. Penalties escalate with harm, assault a cuffed detainee while masked, that's a felony. Implementation. Agencies scramble by mid-2026 to train on visible identity protocols, ditching masks for badge upgrades. ICE might test the waters with the court fight, but public optics? Toxic. Trump's already raging on Truth Social. California's open border clowns want to unmask our heroes. Hoax. I'm not even sure what hoax means in that context. But, okay. Heroes? That's debatable. This law forces a mirror. Do you serve the people, or do you terrorize them? Broader ripples? Huge. Community relations could thaw. Imagine LA's Koreatown chatting with unmasked agents about real issues, not rumors of raids. Trust builds when faces do the talking. Precedent? Watch New York. Illinois follows suit. A blue state wave against federal phantoms. ICE ops? They'll adapt, or not, but procurement shifts mean fewer masks. More accountability tech. And for the abused, this is validation. Your terror wasn't in your head. It was policy. Anonymity is poison. It licenses abuse, that faceless shove, that untraceable slur, because who's to name and shame? Power corrupts absolutely when unseen, and ICE's track record? Family separations in the dark, whistleblowers gagged, complaints vanished. Masks aren't gear. They're a get-out-of-jail-free card for the powerful against the powerless. And pretenders, they thrive in that fog. One masked agent in Texas last year kidnapped a migrant for ransom. Real ICE looked the same. So, no red flags. SB 627 says enough. Show your face, own your actions, or stay out. It's not anti-cop. It's pro-human. In Trump's America of walls and whispers, California's drawing a line. No more secret police on our soil. So, to wrap up, this law is a beacon in the storm. Imperfect, sure, but a step towards light over shadow. Support it, amplify it, because unmasked justice isn't radical, it's just plain right. All right, listeners, thank you very much for taking the time to download and listen to this episode. I would love to hear from all of you in any way, shape, or form, for any reason, whether it's to complain or commend, whether it's to suggest future topics or to just comment on current ones. You can reach the podcast through any of our social media presences. All the links to those are in the Linktree page, and the address to the Linktree page is in the podcast description. You can also reach out to the podcast via email. The email address is neighboroTleftpodcast@gmail.com. Again, thank you for listening. We'll be back with another episode of Back Porch Files on Friday. So until then, stay engaged, stay kind, and have the week you'd wish for others.